Hey guys, welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I don't know if you can see it or not, but you can probably hear it's raining outside, and I'm out in my big 30 by 30 metal shop building, so you may hear a little bit of the rain hitting the roof in the background. Hopefully that's okay. I've been wanting to read this to you guys for a long time. For years and years now, I've been looking for just different ways to think about prepping, SHTF prepping and things like that. One of these stories that I came across, I don't know, probably a couple of years ago now, has inspired many of my prepping videos. The story is called 1 Year in Hell. So I've seen this story on multiple forums and posts over the years, mostly survivalist and prepper type posts. So you may have already heard this before. So even though I can't verify the source on this, I think it's really worth listening to this and hearing this story, because it will help you in your prepping game. It will help you figure out where you're short and maybe make you think of things in a different way that you hadn't thought of before. So let's get right into this. The English is a little bit rough, so it's going to be a little weird. I may have to hit a few places where I have to add my own words in, just because it is a little bit weird when you're reading this, because the speaker's native language was not English. It was actually translated into French by Russian translators before being translated to English. So there's certainly room for error there, and we're going to see some of these as we go through this. But I wanted to share this with you, and I thought, hey, let's look out the window here, or out the shop door, and just watch the rain come down. All these plants are just really soaking this stuff up, so this is really great. But let's get into this. I am from Bosnia. You know, between 1992 and 1995, it was hell. For 1 year, I lived and survived in a city with 6,000 people without water, electricity, gasoline, medical help, civil defense, distribution service of any kind, or of any traditional service or centralized rule. Our city was blocked by the army, and for 1 year, life in the city turned into total crap. We had no army, no police. We only had armed groups. Those armed protected their homes and families. When it all started, some of us were better prepared, but most of the neighbors' families had enough food for only a few days. Some had pistols, a few had AK-47s or shotguns. After a month or two, gangs started operating, destroying everything. Hospitals, for example, were turned into slaughterhouses. There was no more police. About 80% of the hospital staff were gone. I got lucky. My family at the time was fairly large, 15 people in a large house, 6 pistols, 3 AKs, and we survived, most of us at least. The Americans dropped MREs every 10 days to help blockaded cities. This was never enough. Some, very few, had gardens. It took 3 months for the first rumors to spread of men dying from hunger and cold. We removed all the doors and window frames from abandoned houses, ripped up the floors, and burned the furniture for heat. Many died from diseases, especially from the water. 2 from my own family. We drank mostly rainwater, ate pigeons, and even rats. Money soon became worthless. We returned to an exchange, or bartering system. For a tin can of Tashanka, think Soviet spam, you could have a woman. It's hard to speak of it, but it's true. Most of the women who sold themselves were desperate mothers. So that's a sad reality. You know, that's the oldest profession, they say. And a lot of desperate mothers, especially, are going to be pushed into that sort of thing when the SHTF happens. So here's this guy talking about it openly, like, you know, people were trading basically a can of spam for, you know, time with a woman. So that's just unbelievable. That's how desperate they were. Arms, ammunition, candles, lighters, antibiotics, gasoline, batteries, and food. We fought for these things like animals. In these situations, it all changed. Men become monsters. It was disgusting. So let me go back over that again. These are the things they fought for like animals. Arms, ammunition, candles, lighters, antibiotics, gasoline, batteries, and food. So if you're a prepper, you need to make sure you got all of those things covered. These are the things this guy's talking about they had to fight for like animals. I mean, it sounds pretty serious. Strength was in numbers. A man living alone, getting killed and robbed would just be a matter of time, even if he was armed. Today, me and my family are well prepared, and I am well armed. I have experience. It does not matter what will happen, an earthquake, a war, a tsunami, aliens, terrorists, economic collapse, uprising. The important part is something will happen. Here's my experience. You can't make it on your own. Don't stay apart from your family. Prepare together. Choose reliable friends. And that's all great advice. So number one here, and I'm not sure if this person was being interviewed by someone or how this goes, but there seem to be questions and answers. So number one, how to move safely in a city. So the city was divided into communities along streets. Our street was about 15 to 20 homes, had patrols, 5 armed men every week to watch for gangs and for our enemies. All the exchanges occurred in the street. About 5 kilometers away was an entire street for trading. All well organized, but going there was too dangerous because of the snipers. So there was a place to go over and barter, but if you went there, you might get killed by a sniper. So this guy chose not to go there. You could also get robbed by bandits. I only went there twice when I needed something really rare. And then he lists some medicines, mainly antibiotics of the French original of the text. So we don't really know what those antibiotics are, but he needed them badly enough that he ended up going over to this super dangerous street where you could get sniped and killed if you went there. So must have been pretty desperate, right? So next up here, nobody used automobiles in the city. The streets were blocked by wreckage and abandoned cars. Gasoline was very expensive. If one needed to go somewhere, that was done at night. Never alone, never travel alone or in groups that were too big. Always 2 to 3 men, all armed, travel swift in the shadows, cross the streets through the ruins, not along open streets. So they're basically staying hidden and in small groups. Otherwise, what he was saying is if you get in too big of a group, you were basically a target and you could be seen easily and therefore killed probably by snipers or bandits or something like that. So there were many gangs, 10 to 15 men strong, some as large as 50 men. But there were also many normal men like you and me, fathers and grandfathers who killed and robbed. There were no good and bad men. Most were in the middle and ready for the worst. So whether you were a good guy or a bad guy no longer was relevant in this Bosnian city when this whole siege was going on. So the interviewer asks, what about wood? Your home is surrounded by woods. Why did you burn doors and furniture? So he replies, there were not that many woods around the city. It was very beautiful. Restaurants, cinemas, schools, even airport. Every tree in the city and the city park was cut down for fuel in the first 2 months. So think about that if you live in a city. Look around at all the cityscape and the planted trees they put out in the middle of the road and in the medians and stuff like that, and in the parks, and imagine all of those trees being cut down in a couple of months and used for firewood. That's how desperate these people were. Without electricity for cooking and heat, we burned anything that burned. Furniture, doors, flooring, that wood burned swiftly. So he's basically telling you if you have to get to that desperate point, it's going to burn fast. We had no suburbs or suburban farms. The enemy was in the suburbs. We were surrounded. Even in the city, you never knew who was the enemy at any given point. The interviewer asks, what knowledge was useful to you in that period? To imagine the situation a bit better, you should know it was practically a return to the Stone Age. For example, I had a container of cooking gas, but I did not use it for heat. That would be too expensive. I attached a nozzle to it I made myself, and I used it to fill lighters. Lighters were very precious. If a man brought in an empty lighter, I would fill it, and he would give me a tin of food or a candle. I was a paramedic. In these conditions, my knowledge was my wealth. Be curious and skilled. In these conditions, the ability to fix things is more valuable than gold. So, I mean, again, whether this story is actually true or not, it sounds true to me. When I read this, it sounds true, like a first-hand experience, because of the kinds of things this person is saying and talking about. He was able to figure out a way, devise a way to fill up empty lighters, and that gave him food. People were trading him food for it because that's how badly they needed it. Learn to fix things, shoes or people. My neighbor, for example, knew how to make kerosene for lamps. He never went hungry. That's a valuable lesson there. Number 4, the interviewer asks, if you had 3 months to prepare now, what would you do? 3 months. Run away from the country? He's joking. Today, I know everything can collapse really fast. I have stockpiled food, hygiene items, batteries, enough to last me for 6 months. I live in a very secure flat and own a home with a shelter in a village 5 kilometers away. Another 6-month supply there too. That's a small village. Most people there are well prepared. The war had taught them. So these people have learned from their lessons of the past. I mean, just like the people that survived the Great Depression and their children and stuff like that, learned how to save everything and use things that would have normally been thrown away. They were able to get their money's worth out of those things. And so that's really important to be able to do that stuff. So now he says he has 4 weapons and 2,000 rounds for each weapon. I have a garden and I've learned gardening. Also, I have a good instinct. You know, when everyone around you keeps telling you it'll all be fine, but I know it will all collapse. I have strength to do what I need to protect my family, because when it all collapses, you must be ready to do bad things to keep your children alive and protect your family. Surviving on your own is practically impossible. That's what I think. Even if you're armed and ready. If you're alone, you'll die. I have seen that happen many times. Families and groups well prepared with skills and knowledge in various fields. That's much better. Interviewer asks, what should you stockpile? That depends. If you plan to live by theft, all you'll need is a weapon and ammo, lots of ammo. And we've heard about this. These, what are they calling these guys? Wolf survivors or something like that. They're wolf preppers or whatever they're calling them, where these guys are basically planning on just going and stealing from other preppers. So, not good. Not a good way to be. This guy says, if you're not planning on becoming a thief, you need more food, hygiene items, batteries, accumulators. I'm not sure what an accumulator is. We'll have to look that up. Little trading items like knives, lighters, flints, soap. Also alcohol of a type that keeps well. The cheapest whiskey is a good trading item. Many people died from insufficient hygiene. You'll need simple items in great amounts. For example, garbage bags, lots of them, and toilet papers. Non-reusable dishes and cups. You'll need lots of them. I know that because we didn't have any at all. As for me, a supply of hygiene items is perhaps more important than food. You can shoot a pigeon. You can find a plant to eat. You can't find or shoot any disinfectant. Disinfectants, detergents, bleach, soap, gloves, and masks. First aid skills, washing wounds and burns. Perhaps you will find a doctor and will not be able to pay him. Learn to use antibiotics. It's good to have a stockpile of them. You should choose the simplest weapons. I carry a Glock 45. I like it, but it's a rare gun here, so I have 2 TT pistols too. Everyone has them and the ammo is common. So that's very smart. If you're in the United States of America, then most of the police departments around the country are carrying Glocks or SIGs or something like that. So it'd be a smart idea to kind of have what the most popular thing is. That way when the Shtf does happen, you'll be able to get parts and replacement magazines and things like that for your weapon. So he continues on. I don't like Kalashnikovs, but again, same story. Everyone has them, so do I. You must own small, unnoticeable items. For example, a generator is good, but 1,000 Bic lighters are better. A generator will attract attention if there's any trouble, but 1,000 Bic lighters are compact, cheap, and can always be traded. We usually collected rainwater into 4 large barrels, then boiled it. There was a small river, but the water in it became very dirty very fast. It was also important to have containers for water, barrels, and buckets. So that's something to keep in mind. Right now, you might have a river or a stream next to you, and it looks fairly clean. And maybe as it stands right now, you might be able to go out there and filter that water and boil that water and safely consume it. But as the system collapses, people are going to stop respecting environmental laws. They're going to dump more and more of their stuff into that body of water. You know, think about it. If there's a carcass of an animal or maybe even a carcass of a human up in that water upstream, and you're getting that water out of there, that's not going to be a good experience for you. So I wouldn't do that. You want to make sure you've got your water situation worked out, and he was doing rainwater and also boiling that water. Probably a great idea. So next up, the interviewer asks, were gold and silver useful? And he says, yes, I personally traded all the gold in the house for ammunition. Sometimes we got our hands on money, dollars and Deutschmarks. We bought some things for them, but this was rare and prices were astronomical. For example, a can of beans cost $30 to $40. The local money quickly became worthless. Everything we needed, we traded for through barter. Next up, he asks, was salt expensive? Yes, but coffee and cigarettes were even more expensive. I had lots of alcohol and I traded it without problems. Alcohol consumption grew over 10 times as compared to peacetime. Perhaps today it is more useful to keep a stock of cigarettes, lighters, and batteries. They take up less space. At this time, I was not a survivalist. We had no time to prepare. Several days before the shit hit the fan, politicians kept repeating over and over on the TV that everything was going according to plan. There's no reason to be concerned. When the sky fell on our heads, we took what we could. So I would argue that with our banana republic we have in place right now, they would do the same thing. If there was a, what was the show, Don't Look Up? If there was an asteroid coming to kill us all, do you think our federal government would do the right thing and tell people, hey, it's coming, so they could prepare themselves both mentally and spiritually for what might happen? No, they wouldn't tell us. They'd hide it from us, and they'd let the thing fall right on our heads. So that's why I don't trust the federal government. So next question, was it difficult to purchase firearms? What did you trade for arms and ammunition? After the war, we had guns in every house. The police confiscated lots of guns at the beginning of the war, but most of them we hid. Now I have one legal gun that I have a license for under the law. That's called a temporary collection. If there's unrest, the government will seize all the registered guns. Never forget that. You know, there are many people who have one legal gun, but also illegal guns if that one gets seized. If you have good trade goods, you might be able to get a gun in a tough situation, but just remember, the most difficult time is the first few days. And perhaps you won't have enough time to find a weapon to protect your family. To be disarmed in a time of chaos and panic is a bad idea, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, that is just unbelievable. I can't imagine being in that situation. In my case, there was a man who needed a car battery for his radio. He had shotguns. I traded the accumulator for both of them. Sometimes I traded ammunition for food, and a few weeks later, food for ammunition. Never did the trade at home, never in great amounts. So he wouldn't trade at his own place, and that's very smart, because if someone sees you coming out with a bunch of loot and you're trading them or offering to trade them, they may just say, no, I don't need that, and then come back later when you're sleeping or when you're gone and steal it from you. So few people knew of how much and what I kept at home. That's very smart. The most important thing is to keep as many things as possible in terms of space and money. Eventually, you'll understand what is more valuable. So he makes a correction here on the end. I'll always value weapons and ammunition the most. Second, maybe gas masks and filters. So the interviewer asks, what about security? Our defenses were very primitive. Again, we weren't ready, and we used what we could. The windows were shattered and the roofs in horrible state after the bombings. The windows were blocked, and some with sandbags and others with rocks. So they used what they could. I remember 4 or 5 videos ago, I talked to you guys about, if shit hit the fan, you want to have some big pieces of plywood and some tarps and some different repair materials around so you could repair your home. That's where I got this idea was from this guy's story. So he says, I blocked the fence gate with wreckage and garbage and used a ladder to get across the wall. When I came home, I asked someone inside to pass over the ladder. We had a fellow on our street that completely barricaded himself in his house. He broke a hole in the wall, creating a passage for himself into the ruins of the neighbor's house, a sort of a secret entrance. That's pretty smart. Maybe this would seem strange, but the most protected houses were looted and destroyed first. In my area of the city, there were beautiful homes with walls and dogs and alarms and barred windows. People attacked them first. Some held out, others didn't. It all depended on how many hands and how many guns they had inside. I think defense is very important, but must be carried out unobtrusively. If you are in a city and shit hits the fan comes, you need a simple, non-flashy place with lots of guns and ammo. How much ammo? As much as possible. Make your house as unattractive as you can. Right now, I own a steel door, but that's just against the first wave of chaos. After that passes, I will leave the city and rejoin a larger group of people, my friends and family, so they have a place to bug out to. That's a good idea. If things go bad, especially if you're in the city, you need to be thinking about this. There were some situations during the war, there's no need for details, but we always had superior firepower and a brick wall on our side. We also constantly kept someone watching the streets. Quality organization is paramount in case of gang attacks. Shooting was constantly heard in the city. Our perimeter was defended primitively. All exits were barricaded and had little firing slits. Inside, we had at least 5 family members ready for battle at any time, and 1 man in the street hidden in a shelter. So that's pretty smart. I mean, they have multiple places to fire from. So that's really good. You can confuse your enemy if you're not all in one place. That'd be a bad idea. So he could either put down suppressive fire or directly engage the enemies that were trying to take on the house from a hidden location. I really like that. So we stayed home through the day to avoid sniper fire. At first, the weak perish, then the rest fight. That's a very profound statement there. Short but sweet. At first, the weak perish, then the rest fight. During the day, the streets were practically empty due to sniper fire. Defenses were oriented towards short-range combat alone. Many died if they went out gathering information, for example. It is important to remember we had no information, no radio, no TV, only rumors and nothing else. So that will be a very important factor when SHTF happens. You're not going to be able to come over there and just turn on YouTube or any news channel and figure out what's going on. The internet and everything will be down. All electricity will be down. So how are you going to get your news? Who can you trust when you're hearing these rumors? There was no organized army. Every man fought. We had no choice. Everybody was armed, ready to defend themselves. You should not wear quality items in the city. Someone will murder you and take them. Don't even carry a pretty long arm. It will attract attention. So I think that's very important and very powerful as well. If you've got one of these good, really, really nice AR-15s that's all decked out to the nines, then, that may make you a target. Somebody else may see your tactical gear and how cool it is, and maybe they wouldn't have attacked you if you just had like a gray man look about you. But since you're all G.I. Joe tacticaled out, they come and single you out and attack you. So that's pretty good advice there. Let me tell you something. If SHTF starts tomorrow, I'll be humble. I'll look like everyone else, desperate, fearful, maybe even shout and cry a little bit. So again, great advice. Gray man theory. Blend in. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. If everybody else in your neighborhood's starving and you're the only person left with a fat belly, they're going to quickly figure out you've been eating down there and holding out on them. And they're going to look at it that way, and they're going to feel justified in coming and taking your stuff away from you. Pretty and expensive clothing is excluded altogether. I will not go out in my new tactical outfit to shout, "I have come, you're doomed, bad guys." No, I'll stay inside, well armed, well prepared, waiting and evaluating my possibilities with my best friend or brother. Super defenses, super guns are meaningless. If people think they should steal your things, that you're profitable, they will. It's only a question of time and the amount of guns and hands. Next question. How was the situation with toilets? We used shovels and a patch of earth near the house. Does it seem dirty? It was. We washed with rainwater or in a river, but most of the time the latter was too dangerous. We had no toilet paper, and even if we had any, I would have traded it away. It was a dirty business. Let me give you a piece of advice. You need guns and ammo first, and second, everything else. Literally everything. All depends on the space and money you have. If you forget something, there will always be someone to trade with for it. But if you forget weapons and ammo, there will be no access to trading for you. I don't think big families are extra mouths. Big families mean both more guns and strength, and from there, everyone prepares on his own. Last question. How did people treat the sick and the injured? So most injuries were from gunfire. Without a specialist and without equipment, if an injured man found a doctor somewhere, he had about a 30% chance of survival. That's not a very high chance of survival. That's pretty low. It ain't the movie. People died. Many died from the infections of superficial wounds. I had antibiotics for 3 to 4 uses for the family, of course. People died foolishly quite often. Simple diarrhea will kill you in a few days without medicine, with limited amounts of water. There are many skin diseases and food poisonings, nothing to it. Many use local plants and pure alcohol, enough for the short term, but useless in the long term. Hygiene is very important, as well as having as much medicine as possible, especially antibiotics. And I know it's very difficult to get antibiotics and get your doctor to give you things that you're going to need and you're going to want for SHTF prepping, right? I get it. But there are some alternatives. Now, don't take this as medical or health advice, but I've heard from many different sources that fish antibiotics are something you might want to look into. Let's just leave it at that. So guys, let me know what you think of this story. To me, it changed my whole life. It changed my worldview. It gave me a view of reality that I've never personally seen myself, but it gave me a way of looking in behind a siege situation where the entire city was under siege for a year. These people had to survive. So how would you fare if it happened tomorrow? Do you have everything you need? Did you learn anything from this? Are you going to go out and buy 1,000 Bic lighters now, or at very least stock up on guns and ammo so you'll have a better chance to survive SHTF? Let me know what you guys are thinking about. Did you enjoy this story? Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind on your way out. I appreciate you stopping by. I stand for liberty. I hope you do too.